Hello.
And I can hear you on the
All right,
phone.
my apologies. I was on a totally different email.
No worries. I have a million accounts as well.
How are you doing, Stacy? Nice to meet you.
It's so good to finally meet you as well. When we do that, it will basically be just a conversation. This is kind of what I told Hunter too. We're just going to talk about kind of your beginnings and the Drifters project, the video project, and kind of the collaboration with New Noise and just kind of your part in it and all that good stuff.
Cool, yeah.
But just kind of course, my intro to you as just an actor and as a person in general, of course, was through Dylan, but specifically through his videos, specifically through the how to make a YouTube video.
How to make a YouTube video, yeah.
And I remember watching it, and it was really at that time I didn't have a big grasp on who Dylan was, which is why I was watching the videos in the first place. And I was like, who's this other kid with him? I was like, this kid is really good. Who is this guy? Yeah, and just throughout just the costume changes and just learning, as I learned more about the background and kind of how you really put those kind of things together, and being like, these kids were so young and they did
we were 17 at the time.
Yeah. And just the idea of buffering and asking a 17-year-old to wait through buffering, it's just like, it's insanity. And so I'd always kind of had you like in my peripheral, like, what's going on with Max? What's going on with Max? And I remember, and I was telling Hunter about this, this is going to be very random. I'm a huge fan of Melanie Linsky. And
she's amazing.
Oh my God, she's fantastic. And, of course, Heavenly Creatures. And she was recently in Girl Boss. And then after I watched Girl Boss, I every now and again I go on binges where I watch everything that she's in. And she's in a specific Netflix movie. And I've seen it like 5 times. I never know the title. I can never remember it. I always call it. What is it? Yes.
The one.
Yes.
I don't feel at home in this world anymore.
Thank you. I always call it. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel fine. I'm just like.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's basically what it was.
But I was watching it finally, and I was like, that kid. I know him. And I just started freaking out, and I thought that was an amazing experience.
That was a lot of fun, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. And we're going to talk
about that. Was one of my first bigger movie projects, and just to work with Melanie Linsky and Elijah Wood in the one scene that I had was just like incredible. And they were so fun to hang out with. I mean, we shot all night. We shot like 7 p.m. to almost like 3 a.m. That one scene outside, and just to hang out with them in between takes and kind of pick their brain was so cool.
I love it. That is awesome. It's such a great opportunity, and I'm so glad that you got to have that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
Yay. Well,
I'm glad that you thought that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Welcome everyone to Beacon Hills After Dark. I, of course, am StickyKeys. The man of the hour today, very last minute. I was like, wait a minute, it'd be a good idea to actually talk to the other guy in the group. And we've actually been talking a lot about him on the server. And I was like, and people have been asking questions like, I wonder if Max this and I wonder if Max that. And I'm giving his name away, and you already know who he is.
Hello.
Maxwell Hamilton. Say hi,
What's up, guys?
Yes. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Thanks for coming in very last minute. I was like, here's where I'm trifling.
Sure. Like, let's tomorrow. All right, great, tomorrow.
Exactly. But I'm so glad that we got to make time to do this. I know you guys. So I was kind of telling Hunter, I'm a big podcast, very big podcast nerd.
I'm starting to fall in love with it. The more we're getting into it, it's so exciting.
It's an undertaking, and
Absolutely,
I was telling Hunter, he was like, yeah, we just put together, and these guys produce it, and these guys do the sound work, and I was like, you're gonna have a lot of people mad at you at how easy you're making the scene, because I've heard really well done podcasts who have hundreds of followers on Patreon and they pull in thousands a month. And I've heard the ones that, you know, they're pulling out $5 at home. Exactly. And so, yeah, you guys are doing a fantastic job with that. And
cool. That's so great to hear. That's so great, because this is a totally new venture for us, a whole new media platform that we had really no experience in. So that's great to hear.
Yeah.
With a lack of sensitivity, and I'm smacked with insecurities. I got a loss of motivation, could use some inspiration. I tell you what, with a lack of sensitivity, and I'm smacked with insecurities. I got a loss of motivation, could use some inspiration.
I wanted to start out just kind of about your beginnings. Tell us, from the beginning, in terms of music and kind of its impact on you from early, what made that the thing where you were like...
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I was, and still to this day, I mean, I'm such a music fan. I remember, like, back when I was in middle school, I was a new kid at school, and so I didn't really have a lot of friends, and this was just when, like, the iPod came out. So, like, my only friend for a little bit was my iPod, and I was just discovering. So at that time, I think I must have been like 12 or 13. I was just discovering all these older bands, these classic rock bands, just falling in love with this thing, this whole scene and genre that happened, you know, and kind of peaked like 20-ish years ago at the time. I remember being in 8th grade, and every single t-shirt that I had was a band t-shirt. So, like, this was just me for a long time. And one of my first friends at the new school, we connected by, like, playing guitar. And so this was kind of like my way as an awkward new kid at school to, like, make friends. Yeah. So I really kind of doubled down on that. And, basically, I mean, at the same time, I was realizing that I was loving doing the school plays and theater, so I was doing that. I mean, it's kind of been like the same life for me for almost like a decade now, where I would, you know, I spend the days working in theater and doing acting and whatnot, and then at the end of the day, it's always been just to, like, blow off steam and have a good time with close friends. We would get together and play music, and that's kind of been the same energy and process to this day. I mean, I still work as an actor, and I work in the entertainment industry, and, you know, that's got its own stressful impacts on it as well. So, like, the best way at the end of a long week is to get together with friends and, like, you know, play at least just acoustic guitar and sing some songs. And it's always been the same role in my life, which has been really great.
Awesome. Now, did you kind of have that background of, like, music lessons as a kid, and was your family musical?
Yeah, yes, definitely. I mean, I was doing musical theater as a kid. I went to college for musical theater for a couple of years, and then I switched out of it eventually. But yeah, I had the music theory background and everything. I think my first instrument was piano, and then fell in love with guitar. I think I played the trumpet in middle school, and then I remember we had 13 trumpet players and 0 French horn players, and I didn't know what a French horn was, and so I was like, I'll do it, and then I had this big thing that you got to shove your fist into, and I played the French horn for a year, so I played a little bit of brass, but yeah, music has always been a part of my life.
Really cool.
Yeah.
It's funny, my nephew is one of those who's like, yeah, I'm going to play the French horn to get girls, because, you know, he always thought of it as a very, like, sleek. Yeah,
All
very
right,
sleek instrument, and it's just like, okay, yeah, like, whatever works.
Power to the French horn players. He's got it.
Exactly. I'm always very interested about kind of the environment. Do you find that living in California, do you find that need to kind of go towards creativity is kind of in the water? Like those advantages, those kind of...
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's probably a product of the environment, but there's also I surround myself with creative people. I'm the type of person that needs to be continually inspired in order to, be happy and productive. Right. It happens all the time. If I kind of find myself in a lull, everything kind of shuts down. So, and there are plenty of people in Los Angeles and California that aren't necessarily creative. They have, regular jobs. But I think that I've found myself over the first, I don't know how long I've been out of school, 5 or 6 years, within these first 5 or 6 years of who I've surrounded myself with and what kind of lifestyle I've set up for myself. So I think that's probably a larger part of it. I've kind of created my surrounding around me in order to pursue the things that I love.
So one thing that Hunter and I talked about a little bit was kind of the journey of going through different kind of music styles. I know you mentioned classic rock and rock. What other, but then you also mentioned playing trumpet and French horn. And when we talk about trumpet and French horn, we are talking about different genres and different styles. Right. What other kind of music styles were you influenced by, and how did you kind of fit those into the sound that you have now?
Absolutely. Well, I think the biggest influence back in the day in high school, growing up in Southern California, there was a booming kind of like reggae rock scene. And that's actually how I got close with Hunter and a lot of my best friends / brothers today. We were in this band together called Slow Kids at Play. And that was a reggae rock band. And I'm sure, and that was so much fun. And it was so funny because at the time we were seniors in high school, and we just had nothing to do on Friday, and it just turned into this thing that students at the school flocked to, just because I think it was the time where people were already like accepted into college, and you just kind of are coasting and you're just kind of waiting to graduate. And it was just perfect timing where we just formed this little group, and we had a lot of fun. But basically, the musical influence with this kind of reggae rock scene was huge for me at that time. And Slow Kids at Play had played together for a few years after that. We stayed together throughout college and would basically just come back, in the summers when we would just, be hanging at our parents' house with nothing to do. Despite the jobs that we had to work. Right. But it was basically the same thing of like, when we're done with work, we're just kind of waiting to go back to school. So we're like, all right, let's get together and get in your parents' garage again and make some more music. And we kept doing that for a few years. And then eventually, people started obviously working on big projects for some, and then some moved out of town. And eventually, we're all still extremely close and best friends. But we're like, okay, maybe we don't have to force this group to stay together, and we can just be friends and relax. And we still play together all the time. For that time with me, I personally had moved to New York. I was doing some theater in New York right after I graduated from college. And I was just kind of getting introduced to a ton of new music. I guess I'll give most of the credit to this guy, Gary Clark Jr., who I'm sure that you've heard. He's a blues musician, modern day right now, and he is amazing.
Every day, nothing seems to change. Everywhere I go, I keep saying the same old thing, and I can't take it no more. Well, I would leave this town, but
I can probably give the credit to pretty much him. I listened to his music and said, "Oh, that's cool."
The way a lot of blues, especially in the new project.
You would love this guy, Gary Clark Jr. He just played in L.A. Last night. I'm kicking myself in the head that I didn't know, but he's great. He's fantastic. I think I started hearing that and hearing another type of just kind of soul blues. Just a different type of rock, and I was really affiliating with it and identifying with it. It was a lot of fun, and just the way that they played guitar. I think the biggest thing was I'm not a great guitarist. I've always been a singer before guitar, and so I would listen to these guitarists, and they wouldn't necessarily have a huge amount of technical skill, but what they did know how to do was communicate through their guitar, and I really wanted to challenge myself to do something like that. So that's kind of where the Drifters project started taking form. I wanted to challenge myself and change my genre completely, and really wanted to, but justify it though. So I would just sit in my room probably for like 2 years and just learn from YouTube videos, and I think I got a couple of like technique books. Just wanted to learn this whole other form, knowing that I wanted to do a project myself for it, but I wanted to do it justice. I didn't want to just poop it out, and I wanted to give it the right amount of time and preparation. But over those 2 years, it just kind of really developed into a new thing for me, and it was really great. So that's kind of how the Drifters project had started.
I don't want to live for just the weekend. I don't want to live for someone else. I don't want to live for just the weekend. There's gotta be something more to this.
I am interested in kind of the scope, and I wonder kind of what informed this, because you say to someone, oh, you're a musician, you want to try to change your sound, then you have that musician and they pack up their guitar and they hit up local clubs or they start a band and that kind of thing.
Right.
You give it to Max, and Max says, let's do an entire multimedia film project. Let me get my actor, producer friends, and let's make this a spectacle. What causes, and I love it, and it's very creative. And it's so funny because it supposes that, you're like, okay, I want to do this thing and I need to learn how to do it, because when I do it, I'm going to do it on this very big scale.
Right.
How do you set the parameters for the scale? How do you even see that?
Well, it happened over time. Originally, the writing the songs was just kind of something to do when I got home and had nothing to do. Instead of watching 4 hours of TV, I'd watch 3 hours of TV and play guitar for one. So it just started with that. And then once I realized that I had songs, I talked to Hunter and I was like, I kind of want, and he is a professional musician. Right. This is what he does with his life. And so he's my go-to guy. And I went to him and said, I have these songs, we've played together before. I was like, I kind of want to make an album, let's record it and just put it out. The thing that I was trying to avoid was I never really wanted to make a band with members and go on tour, because for me, I would love to do that, but I just have never wanted it to be my main priority and my main identity. So while we were putting the effort and time that we had put into this project, I kind of realized, I was like, wow, this is taking such a strain on my mental energy of making this project happen, and this isn't even what I want to do with my life. I was like, okay, let's make it worth it, and let's tie this into something where I can kind of show this into something that I do for a living. So that's when we kind of conceptualized. I talked to Julio Macias, who is the co-producer, and he played one of the characters, who is the Uber driver. Yeah. And he's a great actor himself. He's on this Netflix show On My Block, and he makes a ton of work happen. So he's a good friend of mine. I talked to him, and I was like, I kind of want to make this whole idea, and it really just kind of took off from there. But once I realized, wow, I'm putting so much effort into this album, and I'm not even sure if I really want to play this, I then had the realization to tie it into something bigger.
So, your seatbelt's fucked up. It's not safe. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It's, I'm a very safe driver. I'll just 10 to 2. Okay. Any particular reason you're going out to the desert? Festival or something? No. Yeah, my daughter, she lives in, now she lives in Tijuana with her mother. Did you say Tijuana? TJ. Yeah, TJ. Just say TJ.
Julio is so funny because he's a kid that kind of really came out of nowhere for me, but it's just like tearing it up, and I love it. He's in the podcast as well, and I love his part. Yeah. And then Vergel, who I mistakenly called Alex, and Hunter was like,
"You
who?"
can call him Alex.
And I know it was so, but Hunter was like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, you mean Vergel?" I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah,
fun friends, but
I'm actually with Vergel right now.
Oh, awesome.
If you want to meet him real quick. We're in the middle of a writing session. I don't know.
I love you, man. You're awesome.
We're at his place, and I mean to give Vergel credit as well. I mean, he came in to shoot it, and he's a writer. He's one of the better writers that I know in my life. So he kind of helped craft the entire idea. And then I was like, "Hey, can you shoot it?" And he picked up a camera in like 4 hours and figured out the whole thing, and he was there with every step of the way.
It was so funny because I was telling Hunter his characters on the podcast. As soon as I heard them, I was like, I need to figure out who is doing these.
Oh, it's all Vergel. Yeah, it's Vergel. He did
and I was
all.
like, and of course they're all Vergel. And now I was like, I need to meet Vergel.
He does the screaming neighbor and kind of like the guy that everyone hates at the office.
Jansen!
And he did it in the first take. He was like, came in, I was like, okay, we kind of have something for you. He did it once, and we're like, great, we're moving on. Like,
so
it's
freaking
just
good. And especially in the video project, it was like, yeah, you're going 2-1. He's like, just call it TJ.
We were riffing the whole time. I didn't write a script for that. I was like, Vergel, you be a dick, or Julio, you be really nice, and I'm gonna just roll for 3 minutes.
Funny because usually it's the other way around.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Which is funny because he is the nicest guy, and I was like, I need you to be the complete opposite of what you are.
It kind of leads me to something that I was talking with Hunter, and I definitely want to talk to you about. He was talking about spending a year just kind of coming up with drafts for the script for the podcast, and you were talking about, taking a couple of years and coming up with songs and ideas kind of for this video project. And I said there's a difference between the idea of I have to do this and I have to do this alone. And I find that one way lies madness and one way lies, success. And I find that true success comes in understanding how and when to delegate and how to surround yourself with people who are going to deliver in a fantastic way. And I feel that with these projects, the quality, I keep saying this, but I don't know how to fully get it. The quality is astounding.
That's fantastic to hear, because that's the thought that we can't go to bed about at the end of the night. Is it good, or are we just, thank you so much.
It is my absolute pleasure.
What the hell, man? None of this sounds tight.
It's not flowing like it should. Maybe we try something different rhythmically underneath?
I don't think that's it. Maybe a tone thing.
Or we could restructure that bridge that you've been doing so it carries into the last chorus a little better.
Why don't you just let me play what I'm going to play and you worry about your instrument?
Ooh, all right, Touchy. God, you're so fucking touchy right now, Stanley Touchy. You're like the touch tank at the goddamn aquarium. You're like Touchstone Pictures Incorporated.
Well, we did. I mean, especially for New Noise. I mean, we had plenty of takes for these things, and we would just. I mean, I'm sure we kind of posted about it on social media, but we were in a closed studio for the dialogue, and then we would do almost up to 6-7 takes if the scene didn't go right. I don't know if Hunter had thrown out Joey Bertolini's name, but he was one of the head writers, and he took the role of director so well, and his taste was just impeccable. He knew exactly what he wanted, and we paired up with it. It worked surprisingly well. We had such a crush on each other too. We would leave the studio at the end, and I'd be texting him, being like, "That was so good." I was like, "You know what you want." That worked so well, and we were totally crushing on each other. But to give Joey credit, I mean, he knew what he wanted, and he got it, even if it took 6-7 takes. And then we went later and did the Foley work and got the environment sounds. And I thought that process. I mean, we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants. We didn't know if it would work or not, and so it's very gratifying to know that it did work.
Well, especially in like this last episode when you're, getting kicked out of the bar and, all that stuff, and just the spatial work and the kind of distortion and understanding, which noises to kind of pinpoint. It's very, you can tell, like, you guys are music people. You can tell.
Good,
and it fits.
yeah.
And one thing that I also like, as Hunter said from the outlook, he was like, I'm not really an actor in that way. He was like, I'm just there. But I said, that's where the director and that's where Joey really steps in, because he understands that in a way that's endearing. Because where Hunter is very real and he's very like that dude that very like
absolutely. Yeah, and, everyone got the Hunter in their life, which works so well.
Exactly, and then you kind of play that, because if there were two Maxes, then it's too much. And if there's two Hunters, then it's too little. And so
exactly. So we kind of had to pair. And I certainly, I going off of that, knew that was going to, we had to play with each other, and our energies weren't necessarily exactly the same. Mm-hmm. So I knew when to ramp it up a little bit. And there was an exercise that we even did in the studio. If there was a scene that was not going, the direction was just flatlining, and I just felt like it was getting driven into the ground. And I guess this comes from, both Alex and I went to the theater school together, so we've had plenty of time, working this. But I would do an exercise with Hunter and I where we'd run around the studio and do like 20 push-ups just to get ourselves panting, blood flowing. And I say, okay, now hit record. And then we... And 8 times out of 10, that usually was the take that we did. So I've had my own time with working that in theater work and whatnot, but it was really great to bring that into the studio with people that, necessarily haven't done as much theater work and whatnot. To bring that in was pretty gratifying.
Now, do you have a facet of acting that you enjoy more than others? I know you've done a little bit of everything. You've done voiceover, you've done audiobooks, you've done, stage, you've done film. Like, what's kind of your thing that you love?
I can't pick one yet. I was very passionate about trying a little bit of everything when I finished up school. And I haven't really, I do love theater. I'm kind of in the mentality right now where I do want to do a play again, since we've spent so much time in production, and I was being a producer and a director for so long, which was really great. But I've kind of said to like my friends and my parents, I was like, I kind of want to do a play again. I just want to be an actor, someone else tell me what to do, and me do it on a stage, 30 times in front of an audience, and then call it a day. So I do want to go back. I am very passionate about theater. Theater is a very tricky spot in Los Angeles. There's a lot of theaters that do a lot of work, and then there's a couple theaters that do amazing work. It's certainly not New York, but I do really love doing theater. Obviously, Los Angeles is the town of film and television, so constantly going out for work in that genre. I fell into audiobooks, which I still do. Going tomorrow to finish up one, which I really fell in love doing, because I have been able to play roles that I would never normally play. In fact, I think that I'm allowed to say this. Like 2 weeks ago, I played a woman giving birth. And it was an absolute blast. I'm screaming bloody murder at the top of my lungs, and it worked. And then me and the sound engineer were cracking up laughing after, and I had the realization, I was like, I'm never going to be able to play this on a screen or on theater. So I do love doing audiobooks, because you play it's like a one-man show for, the longest book I've done was 42 hours long, which is out. So, it's basically a one-man show for hours and hours and hours, which is a blast. So I really have fun doing a lot of it. There's nothing necessarily yet that I've encountered where I've said, nah, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Alexa, please order me 2 sets of the sheer velvet pillow shams from page 17 of this week's issue of Good Housekeeping.
I have placed an order for 2 sets of sheer velvet pillow shams on Amazon.com.
Thank you, Alexa. What would I do without you?
Surely you would be lost, set adrift in this cruel, unforgiving world we call life.
You're right. I love you.
I just got done watching Her on Netflix. It was a great film.
I just rewatched that on Netflix too once it came out.
Yep, I was so excited, and it got me thinking about my new favorite ship, Max Alexa. From
yeah,
New Noise
the
podcast.
intro scene of the whole thing. That's how we started it off.
When you, it was so funny when you were talking about impersonating the woman giving birth. The first thing I thought was, ooh,
yeah.
And I remember I was like, that's so freaking perfect. I'm like, Alexa, please give me da-da-da-da-da. And I love that kind of idea of like anthropomorphizing like the things that we do for like things like Siri and Alexa,
sure,
and just kind of like bringing them into our lives and
it's becoming such a thing. Absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting in regular conversation around people, and someone has a question and someone goes, oh yeah, no problem. Hey Siri, and the whole table, like if you're out at lunch or breakfast, the whole table will stop and wait for Siri. Yes. It's become a normal part of our society. So I think I loved bringing it into the script. I mean, I think that it's becoming an integral part of our culture. So I think bring more of it in. It's only going to get stronger.
Well, especially the pleasantries. We're like, thank you, Siri. And it's like,
yeah, we say thank you, even though she doesn't care. She's no star. She's not even a she. It's a robot.
Well, exactly. Well, what I like about it is kind of that marriage, again, of if we're going to have kind of this overabundance of technology, then how are we going to use it to connect people? When we're talking about the true form and function of what we want to use the internet for, what we should be using social media for,
Absolutely.
This connection. And one thing that you guys have coming up that I think is really innovative and kind of cool is this live show.
Yeah, next
20th.
week,
Yeah. So tell us more about what you know about the live show and just kind of what spurred it and what we can look forward to.
Well, the live show, I don't know if this is going to be a spoiler or not, but sorry, Hunter, I'm going to say it anyways. The live show is going to be the main chunk of the second to last episode of the podcast. So we have one more episode coming out next Monday on the 19th, which will be episode 4, which is basically us prepping for it. There's some personal stuff that goes on. It's a great episode. I'm looking forward to it. And then the 5th one, which will come out on, I guess, the 26th, will be the recording of our show. Now, this is the really fun part about New Noise that I think is kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but like almost we're pioneering this new thing of we're kind of taking this fictional story of Hunter and Max, and they're basically exaggerated versions of us, but taking this fictional story and the music that we're putting in is real music that we are promoting as real human beings. I mean, there's obviously Drifter's music in there, there's Hunter's new songs, and then Rob, who is our music producer, he's a part of this band called Anti-Villain, and in this last episode, the scene, the first scene where the bar fight happens, that tune is the Anti-Villain's first song that's going to be coming out soon. So that's my personal favorite part of this, is that it's blending the lines of fictional story and realistic, self-promotion, honestly. But that's been the really fun part. So this show that we're playing next week is a real show. I mean, it's Drifters and Hunter and Anti-Villain, and we're playing these new songs that we have. And then we also do have songs, this is a spoiler, but the new songs that we will call the fictional band that we create later on in the podcast. We're playing these fictional songs that Hunter primarily has written just for the podcast, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so we're going to be playing a conglomeration of that. It is a real show. We're going to have, our friends there, and we're going to just have a blast and play songs for about an hour and a half. But we will have it recorded, and we will have some, I don't want to give away too much, but we will have some scenes happening in kind of like the back of the theater that, the mic will be picking up on, just to drive the story a little bit more. So I'm really, really excited for I'll show you since you're cool. We just finished the poster, which I think is getting I think that you'll be able to see this. So normally, bands will make a silly flyer of a little sketch or something, and since we're being this whole like, okay, the bar is here, we have to go here. I just finished this painting. I've been painting for the past 2 days. It's turning out to be a fundraiser for the wildfires in California, and so it's this whole idea. So we're just constantly making as much stuff as we can. I mean, I spent 2 days on a painting for a show, which was just fun.
That's awesome. Are you still going to try to live stream it?
Yeah. Well, hopefully, we kind of set a precedent of trying to get a specific amount of involvement from people who don't live in California and whatnot. I think there was like a couple of follows on Spotify, but yes, we do hope that we can live stream it. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
We're trying to get as many people to get on the Spotify channel as possible and YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, and the YouTube. Wait, do you have a YouTube for Drifters?
Yeah, the Drifters, the 5 parts are all on YouTube.
On Five Horizons, though, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about Five Horizons. What is that?
Absolutely. Five Horizons Media is, it's not a legitimate company. Oh, I should have said that. Nobody buy the LLC.
Right, dang it. Copyright it. Put it in a letter to yourself.
It's basically, I mean, years ago when I was talking with Alex and Hunter about all these ideas that we wanted to do, we were going to put it out, and I didn't want it to be on a Maxwell Hamilton YouTube channel. I just feel like so many actors in LA do that and make 3 videos and then it just kind of tanks and they're over it. But what I wanted to do was to create a collaborative company, in a sense, not a legitimate company. I'm still working on it. A collaborative space for people to come in and just say, I have this idea. I want to play this role. Like I want to direct this, and then, you can work this. And it was just kind of this umbrella name that we have. So we've had it for a couple of years. It started as we shot one sketch video that Alex helped write and direct, and then Hunter's previous EP we put out. That was all shot under Five Horizons Media. It's just kind of this umbrella name for all of us to come together, just so we never have to have that conversation of, well, I want it to be a Maxwell Hamilton production, or I want it to be as, I'm me and type of thing. It's just more of an anonymous thing where we can come together and just be creative. So we've done music under Five Horizons. We've shot videos. We've done some photography projects and whatnot. And we continue. I'm planning on keeping Five Horizons Company as just a place where we can come and be anonymous and just do some cool work.
Okay, cool. So it's good to pimp that out, basically. And
sure, absolutely, That's kind of the space where my own creative work, where I kind of produce myself, I put it with Five Horizons. I don't want my name to be up in lights about it. That's unnecessary for me. I just like having it out and having it under a production company.
Excellent. Gary Clark Jr. was here literally a week ago.
Oh, you missed out, baby. You have to put him on as soon as we wrap this up. You have to put him on. He's so good.
I will check it out. I'm sure I've heard it. My brother loves that stuff, so I'll have to check it out.
And if you're gonna lose somebody, well, I'm alone, but I ain't lonely.
Talk to me about you kind of plan for a couple of years. You start talking to Hunter. You start thinking, okay, I'm going to do this video project for Drifters. What kind of fueled the decision to add a media element, a visual element to the music?
Sure. Well, probably because that's where my main passion is. Like I said, I realized once we were recording the album, I was like, wow, I'm putting so much of my time and effort into this. And it's, nowadays it's so easy to make an album for any type of musician, and you put it out and it, will probably get a little buzz on the internet for a week or so. And then it usually just kind of hides away. So I was thinking of an idea of what if we can just make this a little bit bigger. I think that's kind of where I get annoyed. I'm always trying to just top what's usually done. It's like, people make flyers for a show. Okay, I'm going to spend 2 days on a painting. I'm just going to try to show them up a little bit. So that's kind of where we came up with this idea. I was like, okay, let's shoot. Like for Hunter's previous EP that he put out, him and we shot a video for every single one. So I already did that. And I was like, okay, so let's do that, but let's just make it all connected and basically shoot a short film put to music, but one continuous story. And over time, we just created this elaborate web of characters, and they're all connected in some way. And it took a lot of writing sessions of basically here on this couch with Alex. But we crafted this, kind of crazy story of people in Los Angeles and just basically how it was a theme that we were battling with, I think, of just, we meet people and we don't know their backstory, and people are so closed off on the surface. And if only we would just take the time and energy to open ourselves up to other people, they would do it in return. And, you can make an actual genuine connection. So that was kind of one of the messages that we were trying to show. I mean, there's fighting in the video. There's, the people aren't getting along. People are loving each other. And basically in the end, everyone kind of ends up in this, not so great state because they, had their own ideas about one another and whatnot. And so I just wanted the audience to see this kind of from theatrical irony type of sense of just the viewers being able to see everything and the characters not being able to. It just eventually turned into this like crazy web of an idea. And then we said, okay, well, that's really cool. We got to do it now. We got to do it. And we basically we shot for 4 months, basically. I mean, we never wanted to, everyone had jobs and whatnot. So we were shooting when we could. But it took us, we were going all in with it.
I watched a lot on Instagram when you were doing your stories, and
I
remember watching and being like, how is this all going to fit together? I'm really interested to kind of see.
We were asking ourselves the same question.
Well, one thing that really kind of drew me to it and that I really enjoyed, and it's not a knock against this, so if you decide to do it in the future, I'm still here for it, just in a different way. Okay. But a lot of times if you have, actors and they're like, I'm going to do music now. And, you get a very absolutely. I'm sitting on a stool and there's a microphone and I'm just going to sing into it. And, that kind of thing. And instead of that, it was more that the music was this kind of set piece that was framing this kind of overarching story. And I really liked that the music was still very much featured. It was still very much the thing. But it kind of encompassed this ongoing story. And I really liked the way that kind of came together. What was your thought process in the way that you did feature the songs that you were like, okay, we're going to kind of make this a mini movie? How did you make sure that the music still played such a major role?
Right, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, to be completely honest, there were countless times where we would get so carried away in the shooting of it where I had to remind myself. I got lost at a time where I couldn't figure out, is this a film supporting the music, or is this now, did I make a soundtrack for a movie? I couldn't. Right. I started to get a little lost of what was the priority. And what I wanted to do was kind of just keep them completely separate entities. I mean, I do probably promote myself more as an actor and a filmmaker than a musician. The musician has always just been for fun for me. So I think eventually it did kind of become the visual aspect was the grander part than just the album. But yeah, I mean, there were plenty of times throughout the process where we kind of had to tweak, and it especially came in the editing of when do we cut out the music and put in a scene, and it happened a ton of times throughout the process of we kind of had to remind ourselves what supports what. And that was a huge challenge throughout the whole thing. But especially where we're at now, and this is kind of like a plug of what literally we're doing right now, is we're planning on shooting scripted scenes in between the 5 parts that we have to make it one continuous project. And it will be much more like a film and less music.
I think you struck a good balance
cool.
with what you have in terms of there are a lot of things left unsaid and a lot of things that you kind of have to read between the lines. Like in the beginning, the character is kind of getting chewed out by his boss, and he's like, you and your team, you dropped the ball on this, and we don't get the details right away about what he dropped the ball on, what the project is, yada, yada, yada. Yeah. But everybody kind of knows that meeting. And so they're filling it in kind of with their own details, but then also at that point, the music kicks in and it fills it in a way of itself. And so I'm interested to see kind of how that gets filled in further by the extra scenes, obviously. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, and we are still developing the idea, but I think literally 5 minutes before we started, I think Vergel and I just got onto some idea that we think might work. So we're developing it right now. I mean, the past couple months since it's already been out, we've been rewatching it and seeing, okay, where can we improve? What are the holes in the story? The themes that we wanted to convey, where can we strengthen it? So that's kind of what we've been workshopping in the past month or two. And now we're finally getting into the writing stage again. We have a couple of ideas, but how do we strengthen the entire project and with 4 more scenes? Not necessarily reshoots. We're going to keep everything that we have. Right. Add more. But I guess that's all I'll say about that. I want to keep it for when it comes out, whenever we do get around to shooting it. But yeah, we are we are planning on making the video and the film aspect grander than the music. The music is done. The album is out. I don't plan on recording another song for probably another year. We got a couple ideas, but no, right now it's about strengthening and enlarging the film portion to it.
Is her name Tiana?
Yeah, Tiana Okoye.
Okay, good. I just saw it's Tio, and I was like, that's not her name. So
Tio.
But I adore her, and I love her character, and I've started following her on Instagram. Where did you kind of find her, and how did that kind of
went
come about?
To UCLA for theater with Alex and I. So Tiana and I go way back. Since our first day at college, we met. In fact, I gave her the nickname Tio, which is her Instagram name. But Tiana and I have been super, super close for a very long time. And basically, I'm trying to think. No, so we were already developing this idea, and I was close with Tiana, and we were talking about this idea that I wanted to do. And this was when the whole idea was still just kind of in the clouds, and I hadn't really solidified anything. But I wanted her to be a part of it because she is such a talent. Yeah. She's currently on Broadway now. Yeah. That's what happened halfway through us shooting. She booked Broadway, and I was like, oh gosh, okay, we got to shoot this fast because she was moving to New York. But she is one of the people that we know in our life that's like, we want to use her as much as she can, as we can, excuse me, just because she's so damn good. So we were really, really lucky to have her. She came in with a ton of ideas about her character. We wanted her character to be the focus of all the chaos that goes around. So, she's the first shot of the entire project, and she's the last shot. She's kind of this like nucleus of crazy of all these guys. Some are fighting over her and whatnot, but she's the nucleus of the entire story. So we really wanted to make her the main focus.
Well, one thing I find in these projects, and although I love them, I find that the female character often gets lost. And it's very easy to get lost. And she is someone that has always just stuck out from the very beginning and kind of held that presence throughout. I was always kind of wondering, like, oh, what's going on with her character? What's kind of, she was given kind of a different side, and even like from the beginning, I'm like, oh, girl, don't get in that Jeep.
I know that.
Your cold brew coffee, kombucha, girl, don't do it. I love having that person where she is a full kind of fleshed out, full body character, and having that attention paid to her. I think that's really cool. And
her character, her as a person is such like a ray of light, and we wanted her character to be that. And that's great to hear that even throughout this, when the other characters are having their issues, she's just on this steady line. She's the constant of the story, which I'm very glad to hear was showed through. Yeah, she's amazing. She is. I think her show opens next week on Broadway. Share the Musical. Yes. She's incredible. I remember when she called me when she booked Broadway, which is the dream for a musical theater actress. She called me and I was like, "We're going to dinner tonight."
She's Elsa, and I was.
Oh yeah, she was Black Elsa. Yeah,
I pay very close attention to diversity and to just the way that it's kind of folded into things, and to see something like that, I was just like, oh my God. And then even within this project, to have a diverse cast and have it be naturally diverse, and it's something that it just is, and that's kind of what I look forward to.
That's something great to hear. It's something that we admittedly were conscious about, but we didn't have to force any relationships. Right. We're all friends, and we said, "Cool, this is the picture that we can paint." Especially living in Los Angeles, it's such a multi-diverse culture here with so many different types of people. We really wanted to be. We really wanted to make that clear. Obviously, I'm a white male, and I was writing and directing and playing 2 out of the 5 characters. And I was like, all right, cool. We got that covered. Let's bring in everyone else. So I'm very glad that came off clear, because, it also helped that everyone was just insanely talented. So it worked out really beautifully.
And I believe in you more than I believe in myself. But nowadays that's not saying a lot. Locked up in this old room, got nothing but me and my thoughts. And I believe in you more than I believe in myself. But nowadays that's not saying a lot. Locked up in this old room, got nothing, babe. So another night, another bar fight, another lonely girl thinking she's found Mr. Right. I think she found it in a Tennessee sunrise.
Okay, so Drifters, it's not necessarily a band. It's more of kind of a music.
I call it a music project. Is probably the easiest, simplest, vaguest way to put it. So people are always coming up to me saying, like, "How's the band? How's the band?" And I can't say it's a band. We actually are going to have physical, real musical members playing at the show next week, but we're not it's not a band. We're just musical friends who come together to play music. So it's hard to call it a band. Well, it's called a musical project.
That's also kind of embodied by the name, which is cool. And is that kind of how you came up with the name, or is that connected in a way?
Drifters was a very very deliberate title that I gave it. I even have the idea. Yes. If Drifters even was to do another album, I would want to make it a completely different genre. Just keep drifting, keep moving, there are no ties to Drifters. Yes, that was all kind of deliberate. I'm glad you picked up on that.
Disrupting the flow. I do love, I love me a good sandwich song. And by that I mean it's like you kind of start listening, and it's one song, and you're kind of bopping, and then all of a sudden it drops out, and you're like, "Oh, what was that?" Then you start grooving a little bit, and then you come back, and then you're like, "Okay." It kind of flows, and it kind of it makes sense. It comes together. You got the top.
I like that. I like that. That's great.
Yeah, and I feel that that's something that Drifters does very well, but it's also a great way to explore and play with genres. And I didn't know if you were cognizant of that that was kind of the way it was coming off in a really good and positive way. I thought it was cool.
Sure. Oh, cool. That's good to hear. I think a lot of that kind of came from I would write songs in a really weird way, and I do think that it comes from my background in musical theater. Because for years I wasn't playing music with a band; I was doing musical theater. So I think that kind of, you always need a beginning, middle, and end. You always need a resolution. I brought a lot of tricks that I learned in musical theater into this project, so I think that might have something to do with it. But that's cool to hear.
Awesome.
I like that.
And final question: since about 2008, how many times would you say that people have asked this specific question of you? How does a bastard orphan, son of a whore and a Scotsman, dropped in the middle of a forgotten spot in the Max is like, I'm done. I'm going. I'm done.
Oh,
I'm out.
so ready. Can we do that for you? Like, we literally, this guy.
Providence scholar, grow up to be a hero and a scholar. The $10 founding father without a father.
Maxwell Hamilton.
Yes!
My name is Maxwell Hamilton.
Just you wait.
10 out of 10. Last question.
I love that. Is like, it's so funny because that's my favorite musical of all time.
Hands down.
Oh, and
yeah, yes.
Are
I
you
love
obsessed with
what
Hamilton?
that show has done. It's become such a sensation and an iconic thing. I'm so excited about it. I got to see it on Broadway. I hate to brag about it. I was in New York with my parents and my dad. It was on Father's Day, and we went to go see the show, and it was just incredible. It was a Sunday matinee, which we didn't know Lin-Manuel was not going to be present at, but it was still incredible.
That's amazing.
But it was just I've obsessed over that album so many times. Seeing it live, like at the end, and I won't say any spoilers for any of your listeners. No, it's historical. He dies. when he dies, I swear to God, I didn't breathe for 2 minutes. You're just like, the air is sucked out of your lungs, and you're watching this on stage. Whew. It was a good show. It was 10 out of 10, 12 out of 10.
Recently on Twitter, Lin-Manuel was like, we're going down to Puerto Rico because we're going to open there, and I forgot the lyrics to Right Hand Man.
Like laundry room rehearsals. He's been posting videos of him trying to remember the lyrics while he's doing laundry. It is incredible. He's been doing it.
We got you, Lin. We got you, Lin.
These are the lyrics. I know the lyrics. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm so excited.
Good. I sometimes DM with Trayvon, and he used to have a podcast. If you ever get a chance to listen, it's called The Room Where It's Happening podcast. And it's done now because they got through all the songs, but they would bring on celebrities who were like Hamilton freaks, and they would talk about their experiences and like when they saw Hamilton and all this other stuff, and they would talk about specific songs, so they'd go through each one. And of course, I'm such a Hamilton stan.
That's so cool. I gotta check that out. That's awesome.
Awesome.
10 out of 10 last question. That was great. I'm so glad that I knew it. I would have gone, the whole thing would have tanked if I was like, what?
Oh my God. No, I would have been like, no, canceled.
Canceled.
We're not doing this interview. Sorry, you guys. I'm sorry. Max has some learning to do. We're going to school him.
I don't know. Gotta get woke.
Well, thank you so much, Max, for taking this time.
Thank you so much for asking me to do it. It's a pleasure to finally meet you.
Yes, exactly. As we fight over hot sauce and you make wrong decisions.
Team Tapatio all the way.
I was talking to
I'm being such a contrarian to everyone.
No, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, you know what, I like Tapatio too. And I said, but you're a little into BDSM, so you like the abuse on your tongue. And she was like, yeah. And I was like, so yeah, I think that's pain. What it is. Exactly. Like pain and then a little bit of praise at the end.
Team Tapatio all the way. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Awesome.
It was an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Excellent. Well, with that, we look forward to seeing you at the live show. That will be on the 20th at 3 clubs in LA. Stay tuned for the flyer and more information. And with that, say goodnight, Max.
Good night, y'all. Thank you so much for having me.
Woo! Good night, everybody.
My computer was stolen, and this says that it's in there. I just want it back. There's no questions. So, can you get it?
I can get these nuts.
You can get these nuts?
All right, tough guy. You had your chance.
Oh.